Relax. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Welcome to Pillow Talk Radio, the most delicious place to be. On this podcast, we explore how to create more connection, possibility, romance, and magic in love and in life. I'm your host and relationship specialist, Cora Boyd. Are you with me?
All right. Welcome back, Pillow Talkers. Today, we have intuitive mindset coach, Natalie. Hello, Amy.
Hi, so excited to be here with you, Cora.
Very excited to have you, and very excited. We were just whetting our appetite for what we want to talk about on this podcast, and I have a really good feeling. So let's get right into it. First, could you tell us in your own words just a little bit about you and what you do and what being an intuitive mindset coach entails?
I'm an intuitive mindset coach, and for people who are like, what? I teach women how to listen to their intuition and how to trust their soul instead of living from a place of fear so that they can create a life that feels good, that feels alive, that feels fulfilling. And the mindset piece is about having the confidence to really go after what you desire. So it's really about cultivating the worthiness and the self-love and the self-trust to be able to create the life that your soul is guiding you towards, which is usually life that society or other people are guiding you towards, because that life means more like safety and security, which we're all used to. And so in the intuitive guidance, I support you in connecting to your soul. Like, I don't have the answers for you, but it's me supporting you in learning how to listen and then how to take action on that to create the business, the career, the relationship, etc., but starting from within you.
Yeah, I love what you said of how usually it's something quite different than what the path of, quote, safety or security or what people are wanting or expecting of us is. And it can be a scary transition when, especially as women, there's so much that we go through in socialization and just growing up where we're taught not to trust ourselves or like not to trust our bodies and like not to trust our intuition. So I love that. What has drawn you to that work on a personal level? What has that journey been like for you?
Yeah, as you were just sharing about how we're taught not to follow that, a very specific moment in my life came to mind. And I think we've all had moments like these, whether they've been as clear and direct as this one that I'm about to share, or if they've been more subtle and just picking up cues from society about what's okay and what's not okay. For me, growing up, I grew up in a Jewish family, and religion was more of a traditional cultural thing than it was a spiritual thing. So I never really had a connection to my spirituality that I knew of growing up. And I remember when I was in high school, I was dating like the first man that I really fell in love with, that first love where you're just like so in it and felt so good. And he's such a kind, like loving person. And he wasn't Jewish. And it was very hard for my parents to accept that I was dating someone who wasn't Jewish. And eventually it came to a point where I was told, you need to think with your head and not with your heart. In those exact words. I will always remember them. And even though I didn't know what intuition was at the time, and I knew that I was being told that I needed to silence that voice, that feeling. I needed to stop going by my feelings, and I needed to be smart and logical about what was right and what was wrong. And that lesson taught me that the way that I will be accepted by my family, by my community, is if I follow these rules instead of following what's true for me. And I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend, not because it was a choice of ours, but because I had to or should, and felt very guilty and felt very ashamed. And then he felt judged because he didn't do anything wrong. And so I think that was really the point in my journey where I really started to experience depression. I think I was very sensitive before that, but that's where I really started my mental health journey of feeling so disconnected from myself and my truth. And where I really started having that struggle of not knowing who I am authentically and trying to be someone else who I'm not. And that's really been my path to where I am today. That path led me to actually getting married to someone who is of the same religion, even though within me I had that inner knowing that there was something off and that I was doing it because it felt safe and comfortable. I didn't know that at the time, but that's what happened. And I created a life that was not me. I created a white picket fence life with predictable future. I was a nutritionist at the time, being in the very logical, here's what to eat. Like at the time that felt like what I was meant to be doing. And while everything outside of me looked really perfect, I was really unhappy and really disconnected from who I am. And that vibrancy, that aliveness that I feel and that I have access to today, I didn't even know what that was. I saw other people having it and I knew it was possible, but I had never truly known how to tap into that. As you probably can hear through that story, I'm no longer married, and I use all the tools that I learned and that I teach to create the life that I have now, which is in full alignment with who I am. So
yeah,
that's a sneak peek.
Sneak peek. I love it. What was that transition or that process like for you when you started to feel, hey, wait, maybe I should listen to this. Mm-hmm. Maybe all of that isn't true for me.
Yeah, it was really confusing for a long time. And the reason why it was confusing was because first, I never learned how to trust myself. We're not taught how to trust ourselves. So first I thought there's something wrong with me. Why am I not happy? Because everything actually was fine in my relationship. It wasn't like abusive. We weren't fighting. There wasn't anything that I could say, oh yeah, that thing, not okay. It was so comfortable and safe that I thought there was something wrong with me. Like, why can't I just be happy? Why do I always have to want something bigger or want something better or want something different? Or is the grass really greener on the other side, or am I making this shit up? And had a lot of inner processing of denying myself what I wanted because I was making myself wrong. And I didn't feel like the people around me would understand. I thought I would be judged. I thought I would be outcast. I thought I wouldn't be loved if I broke off this relationship and ended this marriage that everyone else was so invested in. So at first it was really confusing. It was really hard to differentiate between, is this my truth or is there something wrong with me? Yeah. And that's really painful too, to be like, I'm unhappy, but like, I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah.
So through therapy, through trying to speak my truth and then not being heard or understood, feeling like if I spoke my truth, I would be hurting someone else, hurting other people. So feeling selfish or feeling wrong or feeling like I was a bad person, like all of this came up. And every time that I would go on a yoga retreat or be on my yoga mat or sit in meditation and really be with myself, I would cry because I knew I was unhappy. I knew something was wrong and the clarity would come through, but then I would go back to my life and everything was comfortable and safe. I'm like, oh, it's not that bad, but it kept coming up. And so eventually it kept coming up so much that I just couldn't do it anymore. My soul was just like, either you're going to keep making everyone else happy or you're going to be happy. And that's the bottom line. And learned through having so much anxiety to sit in meditation because it was not a consistent practice, but waking up at 4 a.m. with anxiety with my dog in the room and sleeping next to my husband and being so unhappy, the only place that I had to go was like, I think I need to go meditate. And that's really where a big part of my journey of connecting to my soul, reconnecting to my soul, starting to trust myself, listening to that clear voice that the more I sat, the more it got clearer, asking for guidance, asking for signs from the universe. I had never asked for help from someone greater than me or something greater than me. And things started to shift from there.
That reminds me of the eat, pray, love moment in the middle of the night. Yeah, I can see that scene you described. I can see that really clearly. As you started to develop a relationship with your inner knowing, your inner trust, how did you learn to distinguish that voice from the voice that was saying, the problem is you, there's something wrong with you?
I started to surround myself with environments and people who had different belief systems than what I was accustomed to, and started to see that I actually wasn't crazy, and that there were other people who felt the same way that I did, who had figured out how to listen to their truth and how to create a new reality for themselves. And I started going to workshops and seminars and reading books and really reprogramming my brain, affirmations, visualizations, meditation, working with coaches, did whatever I could to follow what I knew was true before I made the change. So there was a lot of work that had to be done within me before I got the clarity and the confidence to make the leap. And I really want to emphasize that here, because everyone has their own journey and their own timeline for making the changes. And it doesn't happen overnight like we think it does, or like it looks like online. It's a very repetitive process of going back and looking at the beliefs and reprogramming them and creating a whole new belief system, unprogramming, unlearning, relearning, rediscovering, and from that place, then making a decision. So I think that would be like the short of what it took for me to really learn the difference between intuition and fear. And for those who are listening who want to know how to distinguish which one it is, because it is hard to tell, I say that intuition lives in the body and fear lives in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we all know what that feels like to have a gut feeling. Some of us have deep inner knowing. Some of us have these full body chills and energy moving through us when something feels right. We also know the feeling when something feels heavy in the body, where it's like, oh yeah, that's not for me. Like that doesn't feel good. And then on the other hand, the ego and the mind is always going to be really loud. And the ego will often be judgmental, fear-based. It will be critical. It will tell you why you can't do it. That's usually the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to try and differentiate, even where are you feeling? Like when you get into that fear, where is it? Is it in your body? Is it in your mind? Like, where is it? Can we start to pay attention to that? And then can we pay attention to the quality of it? Does it feel light or does it feel heavy? Because intuition happens with the senses. We feel intuition with senses. It doesn't happen through logic. Fear happens through logic. Mm-hmm. And we're so trained to think logically that we have disconnected from what does it feel like to feel something in our bodies, where we're so trained to be in our minds. That's the difference between the two. And it is a personal exploration of being able to be present and aware of when am I in fear, when am I in my intuition. Meditation is by far like the most important tool that I see specifically to have awareness around your thoughts. And to connect with your intuition. It's one of the ways to strengthen your intuition. And journaling is a great practice too, to help with that.
Yeah, I love what you said so much of like the fear, it feels like chatter. It feels like justifying. It feels like rationalizing. It's like it happens up here in the head. And the intuition, I love how you said it's like it's in the body. It's a like, oh, that's the answer. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what it is, right? Yeah. And sometimes we can be chattering so loud that we can't hear. And as you're saying, when we go into meditation or we create space to like really be free of distractions. And also when we create that trusting relationship with ourselves that you're talking about, where like we can actually be honest with ourselves, because that can be hard sometimes. Sometimes we know something, but we don't want to know it because we're like, well, shit, what am I going to have to end my marriage? I'm going to have to go on Facebook Live. And what are like these people from high school going to think? That's where it can get confusing between the fear and the intuition, because sometimes the intuitive call stirs up fear.
Always. Oh, yeah. You'll have intuition first. And then right after that, within 3 to 5 seconds, the brain will kick in. Yes. And you have to be able to notice and pay attention to when that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also love what you said about expanding into more comfort around all of this by collecting evidence from other people and seeing other people and talking to other people, and that slow realization of, oh, I'm not crazy. I've absolutely had that too. And like, how is it they're talking about this stuff and I somehow know exactly what they're talking about? It just like completely lands for me, even though I've never heard this language before. Part of me is really resistant to this person because I've absorbed someone else's judgment of spiritual people and what that means. And like, how can we clear what is actually other people's and what is our own? And like, also as empaths, as intuitives, as empaths, that's a huge thing of like how much we can absorb stuff that's not even ours and see the world through filters that aren't even our filters.
Yeah, I remember specifically there was this personal development seminar that I really wanted to go to when I was still married. And the only reason why I didn't do it was because I was afraid of being judged, and I was afraid that my people would tell me that it was a cult and there was like that I'm crazy. And I remember having that feeling of, oh, I'm interested in that. And I also was like, oh yeah, this is not okay. Like this is going to get me like, I don't know, burned at the stake. If we're talking about like back in the day, you know, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get really judged for this. And I also knew, actually remembering, that if I went to that seminar, I would leave my marriage. I knew it.
Yeah.
And that was too scary.
Yeah. Did you go?
Yeah. I didn't go then, but I did after. I ended up like the year after I got divorced, I ended up going, and it was amazing. And like, I went to other seminars later, but that one, for some reason, I was like, yeah, I can see some big changes happening. Yeah.
And I love what you're saying too, of it gets to be a gradual process and we can ease into it. We can ease into truth around things. We can ease into, ooh, I'm really attracted to this community, or I'm really attracted to what this person is saying. And like, it can take time to shed all of this stuff, or like maybe there's an opportunity that comes up and we don't go after that opportunity, but we go after the next.
No, it just reminds me of like, sometimes we can like pick up a book and then like not really understand what it's saying, or it not really resonate. And then like 2 years later, it's like, oh my God, where has this book been my whole life? And it's like, we're just in different places. Our brains are in different places.
Right. Or we're not ready for it, or we resist it, or it hits so true that we reject it. We're like, no, if I read this, then I'm going to like, my whole world is going to be flipped upside down. And that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes less scary the more that you do create that trust with yourself. And the more that you can be okay with, some people will judge you, but does it matter? When you really value your own perception, does it matter if someone else has a different one?
Yeah. I mean, I really had to get to the point, and I remember getting to this point of, even if I lose everything that I have, even if my business starts to fail, even if my family doesn't let me be part of my family, even if I lose everyone that I have, am I willing to do this? Even if I never ever got married again, even if I never found someone else that was what I knew to be possible, or like what I believed to be possible, would I still make this decision?
Yeah.
And the answer was yes.
I feel like it's really potent what you're saying too around relationships and intuition, and for my audience, who many of whom are looking for love or they're in relationships, and we can make so many decisions in our love lives that are driven by the optics, or driven by the ego, or driven by, this is my type, or this is not my type. This is who I'm used to, or this is someone who is unfamiliar. And doing this kind of internal work is so valuable for your love life on every level, to be able to navigate and to be able to like really go where your heart guides you. Because why would we go where our mind guides us for something that is a journey of the heart?
Yeah, so true. And before, it was mind driven. It was the safety and security, the familiarity. And, you know, my heart has led me to the partnership that I'm in now, that I've been in for almost 2 years. And it's not what I thought relationships should look or be like, or, you know, he could have been the checklist that I thought that I needed. And I got to look at, when I was in the process of dating and like really exploring partnership, of staying in my heart, and not getting caught up in the future tripping of what is this supposed to be and who is this man supposed to be, but how do I feel when I'm with this person?
Yeah.
And am I able to still be my full authentic self when I'm in their presence? Yeah, very different.
Very different. Yeah, absolutely. I just watched Bridgerton. Have you watched it yet?
I've watched episode 1 and I'm really hooked, and I'm like waiting for my partner to catch up because I don't know that he really wants to watch it, but like I'm like, I really want to watch them, and he needs to catch up. So he might get left behind, but I've watched episode 1. Behind. So you can spill the beans if you want. Spill the beans.
Well, spoiler alert, it turns into some delightful softcore Jane Austen porn. So you have that to look forward to. It's really interesting because it just highlights how much and how deeply historically entrenched for women love and relationship and like security and logic is around literal future security and like economic security. And I feel like there's so much of that still in how we navigate love and how we think we're supposed to, and like what we read and what people tell us. There's like still so much of that fear of like the logic and the security and setting up your future, because we're coming from generations where that unfortunately was the reality. And so I think it's so important to be compassionate with ourselves. Like this shit runs deep, and it's really radical to enter into relationships like guided by your heart and releasing the what makes sense narrative and the optics and the like checklists and all of those things, tuning into the qualifiers that actually matter. Like, can I feel authentically myself around this person? Myself in the past, when I've been less comfortable, back when I used to suspect I was crazy, so I would resist my extreme attraction and like understanding of a lot of energy and spirituality. I was definitely in relationships where I would share certain things that I would tune into, and that would get really shut down. So I've absolutely been in relationships where that part of myself, which is such an integral part of who I am, was completely offline. It puts you in a position where it feels like it's not truly open love, because you feel like you can't trust yourself. If that thing about you or that thing you're tuning into or perceiving is wrong in your lover's eyes, then let's default to their perception. Let's default to seeing the world through their filter. And that took a while to untangle for me. And it took a lot of courage for me in dating to like warm up and expand into being open that like, I'm a witchy bitch and you better not just be on board with that, but be into it. You know, I had to collect evidence that there actually are men who aren't just on board with it, but are into it, and who also themselves believe in magic. And I've talked about that with some of my clients who are easing into that comfort and like easing into that ownership. And it is a transition when we are not yet seeing the evidence in the physical world, but holy shit, it's so worth it. Magical men. They're the best.
Yeah. And I can so relate to that feeling of suppressing certain parts of yourself, or feeling like these parts are shut down, especially spirituality. To me, spirituality means like freedom and expression and truth and expansion. And if I can't be in a relationship with someone who wants to expand and grow and wants me to expand and grow, then a lot of me is going to feel turned off and turned offline. And even sexually and spiritually, I feel like for me, those were the two areas that felt the most turned off, which made me feel really not alive, not like myself. And I had had glimpses of those pieces of myself throughout college and throughout different times in my life, but they weren't online all the time, or I didn't have access to them all the time. And yeah, being with a partner who wants me to grow and who also is into his own spirituality. His practices don't look like my practices. And that's okay. He's very much like a mountain man who likes to like do really hard things, and that makes him feel super connected and like expanded. Right? For me, yeah. I'm like, yeah, you can go do the hard hike. I'm like, I love being in nature, but like I'll sit Like I like meditation and movement and all of that. And so we just have different forms, but that's okay because we both have the same belief and the same expression of our spiritual beliefs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's just the best feeling to feel that part of yourself honored and believed and validated.
I'm definitely more intuitive than he is. And he'll say this, he's like very much more like logical and analytical.
Yeah.
And he's learned how to trust my intuition. Like he's like, even though it doesn't make sense, I trust you.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Was that process for him and like building trust around that? What was that like?
I think the biggest part, especially for women who are listening, who are like, oh, how is this possible? I think it's really about being yourself from the beginning.
Yes.
Is not about waiting until you, and everyone's different. Some people need to feel really safe and feel the trust before they open, and you're allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, it was really about being my authentic self from the beginning and trusting that if this is my person, it's my person, and that I don't want to be with someone who I can't be myself around. And it's not like, it shouldn't be this just like surprise thing that eventually one day, like your partner knows that you believe in magic. That's like deceptive, and they're going to like, that doesn't work. Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like dipping your toe in, like you talk and you be yourself and you see how they respond. And do they close off when you talk about things, or do they stay open and stay curious? And I think right from the beginning is really feeling that out. Are they someone who's open to that? Mm-hmm. Versus like, oh, let me pretend I'm not this way, or wait until I feel comfortable and then show them who I really am and see if they're okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. Another thing that can make it fun is allowing it to be a flirtatious qualifier. Like, just so you know, I did this with my partner too. I was like, just so you know, I'm not from this planet. I'm on the path to becoming a multimillionaire. So just like, I put that up front multiple times. And like, you got to put it up front, and you can do so flirtatiously. And you can do it, as you said, you can dip your toe in, right? Like, we don't have to dump everything on the table and be like, here are all the qualifiers. But like, actually qualifying, I think, gets to be a really sexy process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Play your cards. Don't hide them. I think it's important to be like, this is actually what I want and what I'm creating. And do you fit into that? Cool. Yeah. If not, I'm also cool. Like, I was really in a point in my process of dating, and I tend to do really well with non-attachment, and it's not like avoidant attachment. It's just like, I got to that point within my relationship within myself where I was like, I don't need a partner. And I think probably it was a little bit different because I had already experienced being married. So I was able to disconnect from this idea that like I had to get married. Like, really was in a place where I was like, okay, like I only want to be in partnership if it's adding to my life and if it feels really good. I don't need a relationship. And I see a lot of that graspy energy, knowingly or unknowingly, from women that can be repelling or can push people away when there isn't that solid grounded, like, I'm good and like my life would be better if you're here, but I don't need you.
Yeah. And I desire a relationship. I feel like that's something I see you speaking on so much, desire. Also, everyone join Amy's email list. I read all your emails. I love your emails.
Yes. Thanks.
They're great. So yeah, could you speak into that a little bit? And I feel like that's relevant around everything, and really around magnetism is desire, desiring a relationship, but not needing one, desiring the clients, but not needing them. For anyone listening who is like, yeah, but I do need it. Like, how do I shift out of that need? What could you share with us on that?
Yeah. So desire is the seed for anything you want to manifest or create. It all starts from a place of desire, and desire is something you feel in your heart, like that little flutter, or in your stomach that you're like, oh, wow, that would be really magnificent. That would feel really good. That would be really expansive. And an example of that is I had a friend who I heard she was going to Greece for her 30th birthday. And I was like, oh, that sounds really lavish, but like, that sounds amazing. And I kind of like at first had some judgment around it. I was like, whoa, like, sister, like that's a big thing. And then I was like, wait, I actually desire that too. That would be cool to have my 30th birthday in Greece. That'd be amazing. And I ended up manifesting that I had some friends who were already going to Europe and they were going to be in Greece exactly the dates of my birthday and that I could go with them. And sometimes desire comes from seeing something that we want, and it doesn't have to be from the place of, so there's a difference between desiring something because it lights you up and turns you on, and that's the magnetism, versus desiring something or like seeing something that you want and feeling like you're so far away from it or you can't have it.
Mm.
The energetics are so different. And when I say energetics, like there is a different feeling when we feel like, oh, that would be, I wish I had a partner, but yeah, everyone else is in relationships, but I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
There's a secret feeling or secret belief that it's not possible for you, or that it's going to take a long time. Magnetic desire is this, ooh, wouldn't that be lovely? And one of my favorite ways to tap into that is through a journaling prompt or exercise that I do called scripting, where I write about my future desires, dreams, goals as if they're already happening. And I get into the feeling of the gratitude of what it already feels like to have that amount of money, and what does it feel like to be waking up next to my partner, and what does it feel to be really seen and heard, and how does it feel to go on this trip with my friends and not even have to think about it. And being in that energy is desire. Versus when you're in the middle of the day and you're like, oh, I wish I had that.
Right. You're creating a separation between you and the thing, like emerging, an energetic merging with it.
Yeah. Or truly not allowing yourself to feel happy where you're at, and noticing that you feel like something's missing. So can we create that wholeness within ourselves and also allow space to desire to grow and want more, versus needing something to feel complete and whole and happy? Like I loved my life before I met my partner. I loved my life. I loved my business. I loved my friends. I loved where I live. Can you fall in love with your life as it is and hold space for the desire, versus always wanting to get to the next thing and not being happy and satisfied?
It's really in the like, this is great. I would love more. I would love more of this, or like whether it's love or it's money or whatever it is, it's like appreciating what's there from like the energy of eating a really good piece of pizza and being like, oh my God, this is so good. I would love more, rather than, oh God, I already ate the pizza. Like there ain't going to be any more pizza ever.
Oh my God, you're making me want pizza tonight. I'm totally getting pizza tonight.
I also apparently want pizza. I love scripting. And speaking of magical men, I also watched the Shawn Mendes documentary recently, which...
Ooh, tell me more. Where do I find it?
It's on Netflix.
Okay.
And I was delighted because there was one point in the documentary where he gets out his journal and he's like, this is where he fills his shows by writing out, I filled the show at blah, 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 or, kind of like his affirmations and all of those things. And it's just so delightful. So delightful to see that Shawn Mendes is scripting and manifesting.
Cool. Yeah. I just filled a workshop that I was doing, and it was like to the dot. I wanted 200 women in this intuition workshop that I just taught. And I was like, yeah, that would be really awesome to have 200 women. And I wrote about it. And on the day of the workshop, actually it was the morning after, because people could get the replay, it was like 200. I'm like, yes, so magical. I love this.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes you just have to throw up your head and laugh and be like, I see what you're doing. It's happening. Awesome. While you have a captive audience, what are some things that are on your heart right now that you would want to share? Anything that comes through intuitively.
I believe that we all have the power to create a life that we love. And I believe that there are no exceptions. And I believe that everyone is worthy of the wealth, the love, the joy, the peace that they deeply desire. And I really believe that it's about learning how to get out of your own way and learning how to trust yourself in order to create that. And I really believe that the only limitations that we ever have to creating whatever we want in our life are the ones that have been programmed and the ones that we've learned over time that can all be reprogrammed and relearned. So yeah, really just wanting to share a message of knowing that your heart and soul's desires are here for a reason. They've been placed on your heart for a reason. And you get to create those in your life, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to. And, working with someone who can show you the way if you don't know the way, or surrounding yourself with people who inspire you and who show you it's possible. I think those are some really, really great places to start if you're like, how do I actually get there? And that you don't need to do it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes from you and you get to be supported. I love that. And where can people find you?
You can find me over at the Feminine Frequency Podcast. Since you are all listening to this podcast right now, I think it'd be fun to invite you over to my podcast platform, which is one of my greatest joys. And I'm looking forward to having Cora on in the next month or so. So you can look for Feminine Frequency Podcast. And then you can also find me on Instagram at Amy Natalie Co. Please come on over and say hello. Really look forward to connecting with you all, and would love to stay in touch. So those are two places where we can keep the magic going.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pillow Talk Radio. I'm Cora Boyd, and make sure to subscribe so we can keep you in the loop. In the interim, you can find me on Instagram at the Cora Boyd, YouTube Cora Boyd, website coraboydcoaching.com. Have an excellent rest of your day, night, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and we'll catch you next week.